Hi everyone, ready for day 2 of GCAP? Yeah! Welcome to my talk. I'm a 3D artist and this talk is about the lessons I've learnt so far. I'm Jess and I've worked at Blowfish Studios for the past 4 years. During that time I've worked on these projects as a 3D generalist, an art director and most recently an art lead. But even if I took you through every project, it would be hard to say what I've learnt with each one. The time flies by and blurs together, and I don't necessarily feel any different, so it's hard to pinpoint where I've grown. But becoming a mentor really showed me what I do and don't know, and how far I've come, and what I've learnt over the last 4 years. By reflecting back on myself and trying to help someone else, the lessons start to reveal themselves. So this talk is a combination of the things I've learnt and advice I like to give to others starting out who may be struggling with these things. It's split into 9 points of advice, and I hope that whatever background or level that you come from, that you're able to get something out of this talk. Let's get started. Point 1, be a lifelong learner. This could be the most important point in this talk, and it's that education doesn't stop after you graduate. This is an easy pitfall for juniors to fall into, because it feels like a relief. It feels like you're out of the woods and you've achieved what you were working towards all this time. But there's so much to learn in just a few years spent studying, let alone practice. So this piece of advice is to keep pushing yourself and keep learning and keep practicing, even after you get a job. Because the industry is always growing and evolving. More and more games come out each year, pushing new looks and showing off how they achieve them. Events like GDC, SIGGRAPH, GCAP, and keynotes for Unity, Substance, and ZBrush show off new tech every year. And at the end of the day, you are the only one responsible for keeping yourself up to date. Only you can make sure you're staying relevant and learning the skills that you need to. Only you can make sure that you continue to learn every step of the way in your career. But everyone else is in the same boat. No one knows everything, so try not to feel too self-conscious. I definitely suffered from this when I started working. When I was trying new things or starting off an asset or doing something I wasn't really sure about, and someone came by my desk, I would Alt-Tab away from my work and pretend to be working on something else. Because what if I was doing something wrong? What if they judged me? What if they realized I wasn't as good as they thought I was? But what I realized that helped me get over this fear was that what I'm doing might be wrong, but it'll still be wrong even if I hide it. If I open myself up to learning and letting people help me, that is the best situation for me. If someone can walk by and give me some feedback or advice, I'll be able to improve on how I do things, and that's an opportunity to grow that I wouldn't have been able to have otherwise. This means accepting where you are, understanding your strengths and weaknesses, and that for better or for worse, you are where you are right now on your journey. People who think they know everything will close themselves off from learning new things because they don't think there's anything left to learn. So accept what you don't know and understand where you are, and then let people help you grow, because we're all works in progress. One way I love and to hate to learn new things is by doing tutorials. They can put me to sleep, but there's always something new to learn, and because everyone does things differently, I learn something new with every tutorial that I do. So if you're like me, take breaks if you need to, but I think doing tutorials consistently is a good way to pick up new tricks. There's also something to be said for trying things out firsthand and experimenting. If you're unsure of the best method because you've read all these different suggestions online, try both. See which one performs better for your situation firsthand. You retain what you learn better when you try it out, which is why tutorials are so useful. Now, I have this quote: repeat, repeat, repeat. Repetition matters. Basketball greats don't shoot 10 free throws at the end of team practice. They shoot 500. And also this quote: people who play tennis once a week for years don't get any better if they keep doing the same thing each time. Is this a mixed message? repeat what you're doing, but also do try new things. I think repeated practice matters, but also deliberate practice matters, which means practicing your weaknesses and not just your strengths and what you find fun. So if you're great at sculpting every part of a person, but terrible at hands, practice by sculpting hands, because sculpting bodies won't help you so much. Strengthen your weakest link and repeatedly sculpt hands. This will bring out the most improvement in your work. But this also applies to your projects. If you just keep doing the beginning and the fun parts over and over, that's all you'll get good at. And these processes can be quite long and have a lot of steps. So finish all your projects and tutorials and learn from the entire process. And never stop learning. Point 2, be patient. Much like accepting where you are, things won't happen overnight. And when you're starting out, this can be demoralizing because of the gap between our taste and skill. Your work might not be where you want it to be at yet, and that can be really frustrating. But keep at it and understand that improvement takes time and that having experiences take time. One sign you've just started is you look at your boss and you think, I could do their job. Maybe you could, but you're not seeing everything. There are emails and messages and conversations that they're having that you probably don't realize. And they're not just keeping all the fun work to themselves, which means there is unfun work that they're doing that you probably don't realize either. They protect the team from frustration and sudden changes, which means that they're often left taking these things on. So if you think you'd like to do your boss's job, first adopt a learning mentality, pretend you know nothing, and try to understand the truth of what that job is first and not just what your idea of it is. And understand that it'll take time to have all the experiences that you need or to master your craft. So be patient. 3, look at what other people are doing. This really completes the trifecta. Keep practicing, be patient, and look at what other people are doing. It's easy to get stuck inside a bubble and only look at what your classmates and your co-workers are doing, but there are a lot of other artists out there, so break out of your bubble and take a look at what they're doing too. That gap between taste and skill that I just mentioned will close as you practice, and as that starts to close, you might start to feel like there's less to learn and your growth will slow down. So keep developing your taste. Develop an eye for what's good, because this will help you fairly assess your own work and to know what's possible. And as your skill grows, reach further. Push the boundaries of what you know is possible. Make things that look better than what's currently out there. The Rookies is a platform that features work from artists that have been in the industry for a year or less. They're students and beginners, and it allows them to be discovered without competing with other professionals. This makes it a good place to see what other people who have just started are doing. This can also be demoralizing, but just treat it as aspirational. Remember, be patient, learn and practice, adopt a growth mindset. They weren't born with these skills. They put in time to get there. And the good thing about that is, if they could achieve it by putting in time, so can you. Skill develops, and you're no exception to that. 4, expand your horizons. This is really the next level on the trifecta. We're all the products of everything and everyone around us. We all pull apart and combine things subconsciously when we create, which is why you'll hear people say, nothing is original. We all stand on the shoulders of giants, we all create from what we know, and if all you know is a narrow sliver of life, that's all you'll be able to draw on. You'll be recreating the same things. So expose yourself to new things and aim to have a wide range of experiences to pull from. Play games you wouldn't normally play. Watch movies, TV, read books, look at art, travel, try new things. It doesn't have to cost much, it's just about learning about things that you didn't know existed. This advice is inspired by the amazing game directors and art directors I've seen, because seeing all the things they're able to draw on inspires me to go out and expand myself. They usually aren't just creating the latest game that they played. 5, be nice, ask questions, and communicate clearly. So let's start with be nice. Many people prefer to phrase it as don't be a dick, but I don't think that anyone thinks they're a dick, or maybe they're just not seeing any of the talks about it. So maybe something else is going on. Maybe something like this is going on. It can be hard to think about how other people feel all the time. Naturally, we're in our own heads. We hear most clearly how we feel, and we're at a disadvantage for understanding others. Maybe we hear ourselves thinking, I want to prove that I'm good because I know things, and because I'll be hired when everyone can see what an amazing and talented person I am. So when someone asks you a question, you say, oh, you don't know this? Game dev is like this, isn't it obvious? Or, I don't blame you for not knowing, it's pretty complicated, and you're just an artist or a programmer or a producer. And you think, man, I must seem smart. But the other person, they might just think you're a dick. Or maybe now they feel like they're stupid, and they don't want to feel that way either. So then maybe they start to get defensive too, talk themselves up, and the next time someone asks them something, they're thinking, I'm good, I know things, and might treat them the same way that they've been treated, until you have a whole team of individuals who are trying to flex on each other all the time, when what you really want is a team greater than the sum of its parts. Game dev is a team sport, and teams will tend to seek out people who play well with others, not just the person who is most capable of doing the job. They're not looking for people who are self-centered or full of themselves, who bring in and spread toxicity in the workplace. They want to build a team of people who will work well together to deliver something that none of them could have done individually. So share knowledge in a genuine way. Don't make others feel stupid for asking questions or making suggestions, even if it means you can't flex your knowledge. Do your part, lift others up, understand other roles and disciplines, and recognize the value in the work the rest of the team is putting in, even if they may not be doing that for you. Because none of us are perfect, and it can be hard to think about how other people feel sometimes. Remember, we're all in our own heads, which puts us at a disadvantage. So when that happens, take it as a reminder to treat people better going forward. Ask yourself, am I making people feel this way? Am I saying things like this to others? It's productive. Be a nice person if you want to work with others. 5B, ask questions. If you don't know something, just ask. Don't worry about it if you think it's a stupid question. You're not expected to know everything, and we all want you to ask questions you need to. It's better for everyone if it's done right the first time. Asking questions is a naturally proactive way of communicating, which is good because people can get busy and it's easy to miss things or give vague direction. Maybe I forgot and didn't realize that I hadn't passed on all the information that I have about this task. Maybe it didn't actually need to be done. I've definitely had this situation where someone asked me about a task, so I think it through and realize that task didn't need to exist. If you have concerns, ask about that too. It's the same deal. Maybe no one thought of it yet. Asking questions is something to be encouraged, so please ask all the questions that you need. Finally, communicate clearly. It's easier to let someone know about something than to regret that you didn't further into development. Get in the habit of communicating and making sure that you spread information. Flag potential problems early, because if the team is aware, they can help come up with solutions. It's a simple point, but an important one. The more proactive you can be in your communication, the better it is for everyone. But communicating clearly also applies to your portfolio and job applications. A couple of years ago, someone sent our creative director a vague email asking to come in and see the office. He said okay, and then when they came in, they provided us their resume on some pieces of paper and their portfolio on a CD. Our laptops didn't have CD drives, and we couldn't have seen either the portfolio or the resume in advance, because the email was just about seeing the office. It was honestly a really bizarre experience. So instead, I suggest put your work up online on ArtStation. It's easy, low effort, and shows off all your work front and center. You even have a cool banner that I'm not good about using. When your work is online, it's really reliable and you can access it anywhere. But going further, don't make people dig for your stuff. Remember, ArtStation is good because everything is up front and center. You want to link everything together. Link your portfolio on your LinkedIn and your resume and put it all in the email that you send. Make it as painless as possible for the human on the other end to find everything they need to. If it's hard to find, they may just give up and dismiss your application entirely. Don't waste their time and start off on the right foot. 6. Use reference and have defined goals. If you don't have a background in being a great concept artist, I suggest using a quality concept that already exists. Then you don't have to worry about coming up with something interesting, and you can just focus on making exactly what you see. The goal is clear and defined, even if it's just to replicate an image. But even if you have concept art and style reference, still collect reference. Let's say you're modeling a pelican. What's a pelican look like? If you know inside and out what a pelican looks like because you're making pelicans every day, you can probably improvise. But if not, please use reference. Professionals do it, and there's almost no reason not to, even for stylized or simplified work. Reference can ground it into feeling real without it having to necessarily look that way. It starts to define what you're actually trying to make. But you may need to define further. Ask yourself any of these questions that are relevant. What am I trying to express? What is the goal of this piece? What is the tone? What is the story behind this? What do I want the audience to take away, feeling or otherwise? They're all variations on the same essence, and that's to define what you want to express. Is it a feeling? Is it a message? Is it a story? What's the point of it? Establishing this is really important because you could make something that looks good but not hit your goals. And aren't your goals important if it's not communicating what you were trying to communicate? If it's not expressing what you're trying to express, what's the point in that? There are so many different things that can look good, but at the end of the day, it needs to support the larger picture. And this is all very relevant when you ask for feedback. If you don't want feedback that's based solely on personal preference, if you want feedback about whether it's hitting your goals, you need to communicate your goal. If I don't know what you're trying to do, how can I tell you if you've done it? Let me in on your goals. Show me your concept or reference. Because if the question is which silhouette I like, it's at the mercy of my preference. And you may not want a character that looks like an ant. But if the question is which silhouette feels more powerful or looks more like a hunter, you'll get more relevant feedback. Again, let me in on your goals. And using more descriptive word choices makes a world of difference when you're trying to describe what kind of feedback you want, or if you're giving feedback to someone else. Here are some potentially vague words you can avoid. Cool, fun, good, trendy, intuitive. One way you can test out a word is to try it on yourself in your head first. Pretend you're working on something, anything, and someone came up to you and said, make it look more, and then insert one of the potentially vague words. If that sentence means nothing to you about what direction you should be going in, it probably won't mean much of anything to anyone else either. Or if it does mean something to you, it could be because you have a clear image in your head of what you mean. So try describing that in more detail. If you use vague words, you're leaving what you're saying up to the interpretation of the other person. So do yourself or the people around you a favor and define what you're trying to do. Define it with reference and be clear on what you want to express. 7. Understand the in-game context. If you're making an asset for a game, you need to ask yourself some more questions. How is this used or seen in-game? When, where, and how often is it seen or used? And how close does the camera get to this? And how good does this asset need to look? because how the asset is seen from the in-game camera will tell you how dense to make the mesh, what parts to make more dense, how large to make the texture, how much detail to put into it, and how much time to put into it. Sometimes the goal isn't to have your asset look like a 10. Something like a barrel or a brick wall might need to look more boring, so it's not as noticeably repeated throughout the level. The more unique your asset is, the more it'll stand out and people will remember the details on it, which is not good for being able to reuse assets. Boring could be just what it needs. As a director, producer, or lead, setting up a scale for how good assets need to be can be a great way to reframe focus and make sure the time is being spent on the assets it should be. So ask yourself, what level does this asset need to be at? A 3 out of 10 barrel may be perfect marks. 8. Plan your work. I've split this point into 3 sections. The first is, how will you do it? Before you start, brainstorm how you might be able to go about the task at hand. You can try asking yourself questions like these. What methods or techniques are out there that I can use to build this? Has someone solved this problem before? Is there a tool? And is it worth building a tool? Because then you can make a to-do list out of your ideas and either start looking into them or trying them out. This is a list that I made to form the plan for a mounted deer head. I do this for most of my tasks, and it's never pretty. It doesn't matter to me if the steps are simple, I write them out anyway, because then I can see my progress as I start to cross them off, and not have to second guess or think about what my next steps are. I find breaking things down into the smaller steps makes it easy to dig in. But whether you make a to-do list or not, brainstorm and research how you'll achieve it before you start. There's more than one way to do most things, so look into what the best way for your case might be. Again, these notes don't really make sense, but it helps me to see what I'm thinking about when I work it through. Exploring all the options will help you in situations like this. Jess, those trees have too many transparent planes and we're getting crazy overdraw, you need to get rid of them. Or, why didn't you do it this way? Because you'll be able to provide the reasons why you made the educated decision that you did, or you'll have ideas of other things you could try. Or maybe you just avoid the problems in the first place because you didn't just immediately jump in on the first solution you thought of. Plan now to avoid problems later. Think about what you're doing and how you're going to do it before you start. B, how long will it take? Time estimates come with practice. The more you do certain kinds of work, the more accurately you'll be able to tell how long it will take. But no matter what, always overestimate how long something will take. Don't get caught up in feeling like you should be doing something faster than you are, because even if you're super quick and you do everything perfectly, you never know what can go wrong. Your computer could need to do a massive Windows update. Software can crash and you can be set back hours. Maybe your house floods. Take into account unforeseen problems when you schedule, especially if there's a tight deadline, and always overestimate how long it'll take you to do something. Be safe and not sorry. C, what will you cut? Many people don't like to think about not having everything that they want in the project, but if you run out of time or if something goes wrong, this might have to happen. You want to deliver a minimum viable product when it's due, and this can mean cutting more time-consuming or less important assets if you need to make up for lost time. I suggest forming a contingency plan before it's necessary, so you can be sure that you're not spending the time on the unnecessary assets when you start work. Be ready and be brutal. Here's a snippet of part of the asset list from Stormboy, where I listed the birds that weren't Mr. Percival that we could make. It shows us some information describing the task, but most notably the priority. The ibis and duck are part of the plot. They're vital to the game, or they endanger the gameplay and story, so they're either critical or high priority. Comparatively, birds like the grebe and cormorant we can live without, and because we can retarget the animations of existing birds, they're not so costly and would be nice to have. All other unique birds are low priority, 3 extra types of birds in a game like Stormboy isn't worth missing a key asset or deadline over. So we cut from the bottom upwards, and if we need to, we cut all the way up to the ibis and the duck, because everything else is unnecessary by comparison. Although that second duck probably didn't need to be a high priority. That doesn't matter now, but save doing variations on your assets until you have at least one in the game. You may find you didn't need as many variations as you thought you did. As an example, Firewatch had only 23 trees with about 4,600 tree placements. As Jane Ng, the lead artist on the project, has said, if you can get away with 23 trees, don't make 25. Be ready and know what you can cut if and when you need to. There will always be more things that are nice to have in your project, but remember, you never know what can go wrong. 9. Let your values drive you. Keith Self-Ballard gave a talk about directing careers at this year's GDC, where he talks about the difference between a value-driven career and a title-driven career. He uses a great analogy to explain the difference that he's allowed me to share with you now. He has a goal to become a GDC speaker. He breaks down the steps, he completes the steps, and he achieves it. But what now? Now he has to come up with a new goal. What can he work to? What's his next title? On the other hand, values persist. If Keith's personal values are that he enjoys learning new things, sharing things, and engaging with other game developers, he'll set a goal to speak at GDC. And then he'll speak at PAX, and at universities, and to students who tour the studio. He's achieving these things because he recognizes what his values are. The goals don't begin and end with speaking at GDC. They'll continue to guide him towards what he enjoys doing. There's nothing quite so useless as doing with great efficiency something that should not be done at all. Personally, I think a value-driven career will lead to a happier and more fulfilling life, because you'll always be doing whatever is most meaningful to you, and you won't be constantly chasing bigger and better things for the sake of bigger and better things. You'll have direction for why you're doing what you're doing, and context, and it'll help you be intentional about what opportunities you take on. It's easy to fill up your life with things you don't really care about until you don't have the time or energy for the things you actually want to be doing. I don't know about you, but I've definitely fallen prey to this before. And also, when you know what's really important to you, that purpose can help get you through the hard parts. It's not all fun and games. We know it can be unpleasant work, but it's about what you're willing to suffer through and what you're willing to suffer for, and keeping sight of that. When you believe in what you're doing, pain is transformed by purpose. What do you value enough to deal with the painful sides of achieving that? Focus on the day-to-day of what you want to achieve means, and not just a hollow title or whatever your idea of the job is. Remember, you may not be seeing the full picture. So, what do you enjoy about being an artist? Do you love learning new things, experimentation, gaining mastery over your craft, sharing knowledge, optimization, finding the most efficient way to work? Do you live for seeing a game come together or bringing a character to life? Do any of these sound like you, or perhaps it's something else, or maybe you're not really sure? Luckily, there are some feelings that can help you find it. Passion is the spark that lights the fire. Purpose is the flame that keeps it burning all night. Passion and curiosity are your compasses into what you might like to do, and I think it's important to give them the chance to either catch fire or fizzle out. To try the new things that you'd like to try, and give them the chance to teach you something about yourself. A good strategy for this is to start small. Find a tutorial or a small project that allows you to try it on for size without taking up all your time and money. It won't be a great feeling to take on student debt or find yourself working in an industry and realize it wasn't for you. Try not to get overexcited. Be patient and build up to what you might like to do. You'll be more likely to find out whether or not it aligns you with your values before you're in too deep, by taking small steps. But I think it's just as important to mention that if you try something and you realize that it's not for you, that's okay. It was still important to pursue because it hopefully taught you something about yourself, even if it's just refining your definition for what you want. It'll help you see why you're passionate about some things and not others. So just ditch the things that you no longer care about and make room for the things that you really want to do. Lastly, title-driven careers have another dark side, and it's that whether you get the title or not is decided by someone else. And if you base your goals around titles, won't it feel pretty frustrating if you can't achieve it? We can't control the world around us, nor the people in it, and it's our futile resistance to this truth that can leave us feeling frustrated, devastated, or at a total loss. Wanting something bad enough doesn't mean that it will happen. And sometimes it doesn't matter what we do. We just won't be able to progress the way that we want to. You can do everything right and still be passed up for the job. Developing goals or expectations around what only others can give you can be an unhappy way to live and make you a victim in your own life. Goals that focus on a result that you can't directly control mean that you can take all those steps up to it, but you won't be able to take that final step to reach the goal for yourself. You'll be stuck on the second last step until someone else decides that you can achieve it. So I recommend setting goals that focus on the process rather than the result. You may not be able to control whether or not you get that title, but you can control whether you deliberately practice your craft. So instead, set a goal to practice for 15 minutes every day, or to finish reading a book, rather than setting a goal to work at the company of your dreams. Set a goal to apply for jobs there. Make the goals that you set ones that you can achieve for yourself. At the end of the day, I hope that you can do whatever makes you happy. And that's the last point. In summary, be a lifelong learner and keep practicing. Be patient, things take time. Look at what other people are doing and develop an eye for good work. Expand your horizons and try new things. Be nice, ask questions and communicate clearly. Use reference and have defined goals. Understand the in-game context. Plan your work and let your values drive you. Here are some books or talks I recommend or have mentioned in this talk. If you follow me on Twitter, I'll put these recommendations up there as well. I hope you found some of the advice in this talk helpful. Thank you. If anyone has any questions, they can ask. But I think it's okay if you just yell it out if you want. You can.
I was just going to ask, do you think it's better to focus on a few specific things in the production pipeline, get really good at them? Is it more useful to have sort of broader knowledge but less developed in a specific area?
Right. So it all depends on what your goal is. I think what I suggest is that you find what you want to do. So if you want to do one specific part, then getting really good at that will be fine. Larger companies will understand. If they're looking for a specialist, they won't expect you to be equally as great at everything else. So if you're worried about it from a job perspective, either is fine. In smaller, more indie companies, they will want someone who is more generally spread. But at the end of the day, it's up to you. If getting a job and tailoring yourself to what a certain company is looking for is more important, or is doing the thing you want. I guess the short answer is both are fine and applicable, and people have great careers as specialists or as generalists.
If I could ask a second question. You
Yeah, so I have recently been developing my skills in Houdini. So for me specifically, I go to Side Effects because they have heaps of tutorials, or they're up on Vimeo. I showed in that slide Gumroad sells a lot of tutorials from really great artists that when you find an artist on ArtStation, they can also be putting the tutorials up there, or they'll link you to Gumroad where they go through a process. I think there's plenty of content online, but those are some places that I think are pretty reliable. Yeah.
How do you personally handle staying on top of new techniques while also having a full-time job and doing all the things that you want to do in life?
Yeah, so it can be hard. I think you have to be kind to yourself. Like when you have a job, some days you can't, you've just been doing it for 8 hours. The last thing you want to do is to do more. But I've seen it happen to other people where if you always do that and that's all you ever do, and you're not learning on the job and you're not learning outside of the job, you can get left behind eventually. So I still think it's important, but you don't have to stress yourself out. For me, myself, I try to, but things come up sometimes. So I'll go through fluctuations where I have a month where I'm working on things all the time, and then another month where I'm just busy and I can't, because I want to have a balanced life, because that's what's important to me. Yeah. Right. So the question was, try to repeat it as best as I can remember. If you're in an environment that's maybe a bit more toxic, or it's a bit painful to deal with what you're doing, how have I been in a situation, or how do I deal with that feeling, and have I ever come to a point where I feel like it's not worth it? So far, I haven't come to a point where I feel like it's not worth it. I think that's why I'm still working in games. But for my personal value, I really enjoy seeing a game come together. Everyone's different. For me, it's not about the craft itself specifically. It's about seeing the game. That's just the way I am. So when I see even if it's stressful, at the end, it becomes worth it because you see it all came together. Even if it wasn't perfect, you did it, and some people are happy with it. And I think those kinds of feelings, or looking at your audience for your game, like in Homebase for Scholastic, it's a game that has a lot of IPs for children who are already fans of all these books that exist, and they get really passionate about their IP. So when I'm having a tough day and it's like just stuff is going wrong, reminding myself, or just seeing a YouTube video of them reviewing their favorite title in this book can really make it feel like it's all worth it, because for me, understanding that context is how I get through it, if that helps. Cool. Cool. Thank you.